It is a privilege for me to be back here at Queens. This place for the past several years has been like a second home. I tell everybody I can that the weather isn't always great in December, but the welcome is, and I'm thrilled to be here with all of you. And we, as you all know, have the luxury of being in a city of history. A city that set the standard in critical industries like rope building, linens, and shipbuilding. The combination of the ingenuity, the skill, the grit, the determination literally led the world. But the story of Belfast and Northern Ireland has been about much more than just industry. It's also about identity, it's about conflict, it's about resilience. It's also about the activism and art, the faith and frustration, the triumph and transformation that shaped the people that helped shape this place. So we are in a fitting spot to think of the moment that we're in and all that Northern Ireland can once again offer the world. And that's far more than just industrial might. And it's about the peace that you chose to build and the history that we keep. A history that teaches that progress is not inevitable and peace is not a certainty. It has to be built and nurtured and defended every single day. Now, I recognize that that might not be a lesson that strikes any of you as new, but it is an urgent one for me, because back home in America, we are at probably the most divided time we've been since the 1860s. We are a country pulling apart. The headlines of the day show that we disagree on narrative, fact, and politics at its core. We look at our neighbors with suspicion. The work that we have done to try to pull people together is being exploited by political powers for their own political gain. And so the question comes at this point, what are we going to do about it? Almost every day I talk to people that say, I can't wait for the next election because it will bring us answers. And folks, I'm here today to discuss this with you because I think you all know better than that. I think you know that waiting for peace is not in fact how peace is built. That it doesn't descend from the heavens as some charismatic leader promising solutions to problems, but it is built and invested in and nurtured every single day. That is the lesson that I take from my time in Northern Ireland. So the story that we hear often about a Northern Ireland peace process is that after decades of conflict, you had these talented and courageous politicians, Blair, Ahern, Clinton, Hume, Trimble, Adams, that found a way to come together and over a series of meetings, navigated with the artful hand of George Mitchell, were able to deliver peace. And look, those folks deserve enormous credit. They showed real courage and they did real work to bring us to where we are today. But the fact is that that story is incomplete. That long before those politicians came together, there were in fact people across our community that were doing the hard, painstaking work of building relationships in community day in and day out. There were women's and mothers groups that were forming bonds over concerns about their children's security, about economic survival. There are local community organizations that had long invested in creating conversations across difference. These are names that you all know. The Coromila community that had started through their residential space, bringing people together to spend time with one another, to learn about their difference and the way in which the conflict and troubles was impacting them. 174 Trust, and Bill Shaw, an absolute hero who spent 27 years using art and other tactics to bring people in, including Super Sundays, where he fed people breakfast once a month every Sunday for decades. East Belfast Mission, that has been doing work in one of the most economically and socially isolated parts of Belfast for years. Greater Shankill Partnership, I had the pleasure of visiting once with Jackie Redpath. We showed up about an hour late and spent an hour with people that were being trained through their kitchen, their community events, such that we never even got much time to spend with the individuals that were out there doing the work in the Greater Shankill area because we were so far delayed learning from what they were building. Clonard Monastery is a sanctuary, but it is known not just for the space and the peace that it brings within its walls between the falls and the Shankill, but for the work and the conditions that they built outside those communities to set the conditions for peace. The Women's Coalition came together because, I don't need to tell you, but women were left out of a lot of this process. They didn't ask for permission, they organized outside party structures, and by that organization and the force of will of Monica McWilliams, earned a seat at that table. Nobody here waited. They acted. They built and they constructed. And over time, by 1998, they set the conditions that allowed those politicians to be able to deliver peace. And that lesson today is as relevant as it was those nearly 30 years ago. Particularly urgent for me and from my perspective coming from the United States. Because we now live in a political system that accentuates and incentivizes the pulling apart of our politics rather than the mending together. You all might have seen this map at some point. What you see behind me is a county-by-county map of the 2024 election for the US president. That space in red represents votes for Donald Trump. That space in blue represents votes for Democratic candidate Kamala Harris. Keep in mind that all of that red ends up being about 2 million more votes than all of that blue, those little dots. But what you see here is the polarization that has taken place across America. As I served nearly 10 years in the US Congress, and I saw it, I felt it, I lived it, where partisanship ended up being incentivized. Social media created followings for people that could say the most outrageous thing. Cross-party relationships and the ability to move bills with broader coalitions were not. The impact of this meant that with gerrymandering, the impact of various Supreme Court decisions, that parties moved to incentivize and to codify their own power structures rather than finding ways to build across difference. We have here a system that maximized political advantage and minimized humanity. And so, where do we go from this point? The lesson I take from Northern Ireland, and the lesson that I believe that we need at the United States, is that investment back in local community organizations. The builders, the healers, the weavers, the menders, the problem solvers, the neighbors. People that understand that peace isn't delivered once and then solved, but you have to build it and nurture it every single day. And that has been what I've tried to do with my work for an organization I founded, Groundwork Project, which supports hyper-local organizers and organizations in swaths of the country that don't receive a significant amount of investment. What you'll notice from the map here is there's large swaths across the United States, the Plains, the Deep South, and Appalachia, an area there from West Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky, where Democratic politicians and Democratic support has largely evaporated. What you hear, what people hear in those places about a Democrat is normally what a Republican says about a Democrat, which from time to time isn't always the nicest, right? What you need is local communities that are able to build that out, that trust and support. So it's people like Angela Curry from United Women of Color, who spends her time building up an organization in northern Alabama, filling gaps on education and community engagement to be able to mobilize to protect and defend her community. People like the Red Dirt Collective in Norman, Oklahoma, built around mutual aid, literally communities providing support and assistance for whatever it is another community needs, focused on rural, poor areas across northern Oklahoma. Or the Steps Coalition. It's a coalition of organizations that came together in the Mississippi Gulf Coast after Hurricane Katrina to try to advocate for housing after an affordable housing stock got completely wiped out. Congress passed $100 million to rebuild it, and it got sent off to a Navy contractor to revitalize a Navy base instead. They focused on economic development, workforce training, and meeting the needs of local communities. West Virginia Tenants' Rights Organizing Association, Valeria Steele. Valeria was a resident of a mobile home trailer park in West Virginia, when she found out that the land had been purchased by an out-of-state hedge fund that then increased fees and rent and started evicting her neighbors. And so she fought back using tenants' rights laws that have been largely ignored across parts of West Virginia. These folks, they're not names that you will necessarily know, but they are there, and they are building and fighting for their America and their community every single day. Those names, those stories, from my perspective, are quite similar to the Bill Shaws and the Monica Williams, names that the world didn't necessarily know, but you did. Because they were walking your streets, they were holding your hand, they were listening to your communities, and they earned your trust. And that ultimately is the road that we have to have ahead. It's people that are willing to invest in other people and reject the cold comfort of partisan divide for the hard, gritty, messy humanity that unites us all. For the fact that the recognition that while humanity can be complex and identity certainly, that when all is said and done, most of us actually all want the very same thing. We in the United States, regardless of party, are asking and hoping for a better future. We're asking for the temperature to come down. We hope somebody will fix the challenges without actually even knowing or agreeing on what needs to be fixed. But the solution, from my perspective, is obviously not waiting for it to happen, but it's building off of a place that does this better than anybody else, that knows what it means to go from conflict to peace and to earn it every single day, to build for hope, or in the words of another favorite son from Northern Ireland, for the good that exists in all of us. Northern Ireland has shown me that there's still good worth fighting for, that we see it every single day. And what I ask of all of you is to stand up and tell it, and share it, and sing it. These are lessons that America needs to know and needs to hear. And there's no better people out there to teach us than all of you. Thank you so much.